Alright, in this video we're going to talk a little bit about how the tuba is very similar to other brass instruments. Well, first of all, it's made of brass. That's a big obvious thing. The tuba is made of brass. It's made of the same type of materials that other brass instruments are. In addition to that, it also uses a very similar way to make a sound. On most brass instruments, well, pretty much all brass instruments, there's some sort of buzzing happening with the lips. There's vibration with the lips that's put into a mouthpiece in order to create a sound, and then the sound is transferred through the instrument. All brass instruments have the sound go in through the mouthpiece and out through the bell. They don't come out like in other parts of the instruments like woodwinds do. Another thing is the tuba mouthpiece is very proportional in size to the size of the instrument. If you were to look at a trumpet mouthpiece, the size of the cups and the holes are very different in size, but the same idea, the general idea of how the mouthpiece works is pretty much the same. So if you're switching from a brass instrument, you already can make a good tone on your instrument. It's going to be very similar to the tuba. There's a little bit of difference because the pitches are lower. You are going to have to change your buzz a little bit, but that's just the same. Brass instruments all need that same kind of buzzing vibrations from the lips in order to play the tuba. Now, what are some other things that might be similar? If you are a baritone, a French horn, or a trumpet player, you're used to at least being able to press down some buttons or some valves on your instruments. Okay? Now on a trumpet, the valves do a very specific job. They change where the air travels through the instrument in order to change the sounds of the notes that you can get. The tuba does a very, very similar thing. Just like a trumpet or a baritone or a euphonium or a French horn, the valves, when pressed, do the exact same thing that they do on those other instruments. And if you've learned how to play already like some type of scale on your instrument, you'll notice the patterns of which valves get pressed for certain notes are very similar. And in most cases, they're basically identical. It's just a matter of where the notes are read on the staff. So to give you a couple ideas, the first valve is usually always a whole step on the brass instruments. Meaning, if you play a note, it'll always drop it down a whole step if you don't change anything. The middle valve will always change it a half step lower. And the third valve will change it a minor third lower. So it's important to know this because the valve combinations that you use for, say, a trumpet are very, very similar. Now, if you're a trombone player, you might not realize this yet, but you don't really have many valves. You have a slide on your instrument. And the slide has some similarities we'll talk about in another video. But once you make the correlation between how the slide is very related to the valves, it'll become much more easier for you to understand how to switch to the tuba.